We have a 15-degree pen angle. Now you may find some difficulty shifting from a 45-degree pen angle down to a 15-degree pen angle, but it's much less complex than punching a key on the typewriter to change from cap to lowercase. You just move your thumb and forefinger and you've made the shift. Well, let's see a way to find what a 15-degree pen angle would be. You draw a square and be sure that it's a square. And we draw a diagonal on that square, and that diagonal, of course, cuts a 90-degree angle, so this is 45 degrees. Well, 3 times 15 is 45, so find a mark a third of the way down, and this should be approximately your 15-degree pen angle. So get the edge of the pen flat like that, and it will make a much stronger letter. The letters are only 7.5 pen widths in height, which means the top of the letter comes halfway between the waistline and the sender line. So start about 10 minutes to 11, imagining it were a clock dial. Swing down around to about 5:15, 10 after 5. A sloping, wide letter. The C is something like the O, except that the upper arm is lifted. Don't make it rigidly straight. Lower the bottom arm. And notice that if you join the ends of the arms, that should be about a 5-degree slope from the vertical, so that if you were writing an L after it, the L would be in parallel to that dotted line. D is our next letter, so with that flat pen angle we get a heavy vertical stem and a relatively light horizontal, lighter than the vertical stem. Make 2 parallel lines, you see, and then swing out and get a full round. O, C, D, G is the next one. G originally was C. Then the Romans threw K out and used C for the K sound, and then invented a new sign for G. See, my hand, just without my wanting to, automatically put a serif at the head there. And the Romans added a vertical stroke here in the lower right-hand corner with a serif on it and made that wide G. The Q is like an O with that diagonal tail on it. The diagonal part is really the Q, as the British call a line of people. This is the Q down here, that line. And be sure that it's not, that it doesn't hang down in a spiritless way, or that it doesn't crowd up so that it's going to bump into a minuscule U or a majuscule U, which always comes after the Q. You must have untouched paper in here. O, C, D, G, Q are that first width group, the wide group. The next group is the 4/5 group. That is, the width is 4/5 the height. And that's a little difficult to memorize, but with practice you'll get it. So pull that down, lay the crossbar on the midline, just above it, and then draw the other one. Without flourishes, it's a rather dull letter, but we'll get interesting flourishes later on. The A, see, we start with H because H gives you a measure for the A, the base of A. Now overlap those 2 strokes. Don't come down like that and then add that on top. No, it should overlap the beginning stroke. This crossbar is the width of the bar below the center. The center would be halfway between the base, the writing line, and the cap line. So rest this just on the width of the bar below the center. This rests on the mid-line, dividing, that is, between the writing line, cap line. And we try to keep to the 15-degree pen angle here. Again, overlap the strokes, almost a slight reverse curve. And come down. Now, how do you hit this down here? focus your eyes down there, and out of the corner of your eye, watch the pen. You can keep your appointment in that lower right-hand corner. But again, these must overlap. The T, start with the horizontal. We always write from left to right and from top to bottom in anything except the most rapid cursive. Then find the midpoint and come down. The Romans didn't show us how to write U because they didn't have the letter. The V served that purpose. And this calligraphic version you'll find is the most stable. If this curves all the way up here without that, it's likely to look insecure. Now, how do you get V, X, Y, W to slope? Easy. If you remember this, come down quite steeply with the first stroke of V. Then go way over on the second stroke. If you want to know what the slope is, find the midpoint and connect it with the point of the counter. Now there's your letter slope. X, start the way you did V, down steep. Go way over and then cross above center so that the letter is not top heavy. This is a little bit above center. Y is something like the top part of X, except that you come down a little lower, below center. Take the vertical and go way over. Draw that in. A letter form which you may find more satisfactory, easier, is that. Don't have that vertical. Now Z can be, the idea of Z, in a sense, is a horizontal, a diagonal, and a horizontal. And the slope of it you find by imagining a line connecting those two arms. But that looks terribly self-righteous. It looks mean. It bares its teeth. So sweeten it up a little bit with the slightest reverse curve. Whatever you do, don't overdo that. Then go over with the diagonal, and then the slight reverse curve on the bottom arm. Now you see it looks much warmer, much more human. The last letter in this series, really, we're not sure that it belongs in this series, K. Again, the Romans threw K out of the alphabet back when they invented G, and we don't see K except when they transliterate Greek words, and then it's a kappa, which is a slightly different design from the one we use. You'll have to experiment to find out how far to go over. Bring this diagonal down just above center. And then, as you read in Edward Johnson, the secret of K is to make a 90-degree angle in here. And if you get a 90-degree angle there, you're 90. Started to put 45 down. But that 90-degree angle will give you a good K. This lower counter must be bigger than the upper counter. Now, the next group should be quite easy, but the beginner gets careless, and don't you. We start with a B, half as wide as it is high. Slope downhill just slightly, horizontal. The horizontal up here, but shoulder it up a bit with a curve. Come in and put the crossbar just above center, as we did with H. Now, the lower counter, you see, is larger than the upper counter, and there's no danger of the letter being top-heavy. E, we begin E as we began D with an L stroke. Now keep this very narrow. This is short. E is a narrow letter. Now rest the second arm, the mid-arm, on the line that's halfway between the routing line and the ascender line. Ignore the waistline, by the way. If you can see the waistline in your guidelines, ignore it. Pretend it's not there, because that has nothing to do with the construction of majuscules. The F is just something like the E, but the mid-bar, the second bar, is just under the midline because of this counter down here. The top would look squeezed if you made it narrow. If you made the second bar on the line, midline. Now J, is a late letter. It's I with a descender. And until about 1527, always J could be vowel or consonant, I could be vowel or consonant. In our usage of it, it's a consonant only. But being an I with a descender, I like to have the J come down a little below the writing line, which is in here, you see. L, we've been practicing L with D, with E, B. You have a very short horizontal. The P starts something like a B, slight shouldering, horizontal, swing out a nice full bowl, come down below the midline, or that horizontal. R, very much like the P, and the classic letter, the bowl pulls down to a horizontal below the center. And then where the horizontal here meets that curve, you put the diagonal. Now, you'll find in some advertising letters, under the influence of Germans, I think, primarily, that the diagonal of K will touch the vertical stem, and the R begins to resemble K with a curved top. Well, R and K have nothing in common, I'd say, and get that horizontal in there. S is our next letter. We worked with S last time. Remember, you lift the upper bar, get a full curve, straighten the spine. You get a larger full curve, slightly larger, and then lower the bottom arm. So the idea is to lift the top arm, get a full curve, straighten the spine, get a slightly larger full curve, and lower the bottom arm. Now you may think this doesn't look larger than that. Let's turn it over and see if it is. Now if you look at that, you'll see the bottom what was the bottom, is much larger here than the top. Can we find that? See, this looks small, and our eyes magnify this, but you turn an S over, and you can always tell whether it's top-heavy or not. That finishes the second width group. Then comes the wide letters, the two wide letters. In a sense, M is a letter, W is two letters, as the name suggests. Now, how do you make M slope? It's already all the strokes slope, so you have to slope a sloping letter. Don't slope this first stroke of M over very far. Come down very close to it with this second overlapping stroke. The classic M doesn't quite come down to the writing line. Now, M is wide, but it's wide because of this central V, not because of space here or space in here. What gives it its great width is the width of that central V. So as with writing V, come down steep, go way over, and slope right, we'll find the midpoint, and there's our letter slope. Now focus your eyes here on the left counter. Don't watch the pen, except out of the corner of your eye. These counters must be approximately the same size. So by focusing your eye here, you can get this out of the corner of your eye to equal that. Let me do an M again. That's a little narrow for my taste. I think that's a handsomer M. It's a gracious and wonderful letter. Mem in Hebrew was water, and they had a great body of water in the original sign. That's the origin of M, much water. W, made up of two V's. See, V was still called U in Queen Elizabeth's day. It was a version of the vowel. So we come down steep and go way over. But it's not as wide as V, or W would be way too wide. Now make the third stroke parallel to the first one, the fourth stroke parallel to the second one. W is not an upside-down M. 1 and 3 are not parallel on M. 2 and 4 are not parallel on M. But 1 and 3 are parallel on W, 2 and 4, of course, are parallel on W because we're repeating the single letter. And I neglected to say last time that ampersand is baby talk for and per se and this is the sign that they read as and. The sign in Castle printing type, which was on the horn books the little children used in New England before the Revolution, and that was ampersand, baby talk for and per se and. Another version has the Greek epsilon form of E, and it's more recognizably the Latin ET in the and. But the most beautiful ampersand is one, I think, which you can write rather quickly without even lifting the pen if you practice it. That's an ET. The one I like for rapid, fast writing is this. That's an ET. Now, how do you learn to make strokes that are round, that have full sweep curves, and straight verticals, straight horizontals? Well, it takes practice, and you don't worry about it. You just keep at it, and finally the curves will be full and sweet, and the straights will be straight. Don't worry. Keep working. Ohio is a word that I recommend you practice frequently. Have pads all over the house. Wherever you're likely to sit down and have a cup of coffee or tea or watch television, have a pad there, and with the pen in your hand and the pad in your lap, you'll be amazed how much practice you can get in, no matter how exciting the program is you're listening to. You can follow the program all right and still do practice work. You just watch the pen and you listen listen to the program. It may be the funny way to avoid concentrating, but I find that it works, and people get ahead with their Italic by practicing during sessions with the whole family watching television. Well, Ohio is an awfully good word to practice to get round, and straight. So let's try Ohio. Wonderful thing about television that you can't find in a book is that you can watch the action. The action is so necessary. A teacher is ideal, but there may be no teacher near you. And let television be your teacher, where you can watch the action, the movement, the touch and movement of the pen, because that's something no book can ever show you. It can tell about it, but it's not enough. Let's try it again. After a while, your O's will be round and your horizontals and verticals will be straight. It will amaze you. But you have to keep doing it. Ohio is a sweet word. Another word that I suggest that you practice is Portland. You go around town here, and it's amazing how often on buildings, on windows of offices and stores, on trucks, you'll see the word Portland, and it falls into two parts, Portland and. There's such a hole between the L and the A that you read and very often, and not see it as Portland. Well, it's unpleasant to have a construction fall apart that way. Now, so it's a good thing to practice it. You learn a lot about spacing writing this name Portland. Let's try it out. We have such a big hole coming after that L with the A falling away that we need to space these out. So let's see how wide we can get our spacing. See, the O is quite some distance from the P to get a really beautiful effect. I'll try to get that distance optically the same. The spacing is more important than the letters. You won't realize that for a while, probably. T is tricky because of the counters, the holes underneath that horizontal top piece. Now this L comes rather close to that. Oh, and keep that short. And A comes clear down right to the end of that horizontal arm. Now the width of the bar below center, come down steep. See, A is the opposite of V. It's way over and down steep, where before with V it was down steep and then way over. Now N is some distance away from the A. And the diagonal with almost a slight reverse curve. Focus your eye on the first stroke of downstroke of N, and out of the corner of your eye guide the pen, and you'll find you can make these quite parallel. Now obviously D is going to have to be way over here, way over. Remember the rule about parallels being farther apart than the parallel and the curve, and then two curves are closer together. Now, you don't see such a great hole in here. The two seem to be spaced better. Let's try it again and watch the movement of the pen. We don't use this plain alphabet very much in writing, except for children maybe, or when you're working very fast, almost scribbling. We want to get a more finished-looking letter than this plain one. But in order to write flourish caps, slab serif caps, and in order to do full serious formal Roman caps, you have to base them on these plain caps. The purpose for working repeatedly with the plain caps is that you memorize the width groups. And no matter how well you do a capital letter, if it's in the wrong width group, it's going to fall apart. It's going to be ugly. So memorize the width group. That's the most important thing at the beginning. A flat pen angle and the width group. Then you need to know the constructions. But let's try Portland again. See, my hand wants to put serifs on automatically. Oh, spacing is so important. Because as I've said, a letter is more paper than it is ink. So you have to watch spacing. That's a nice R. Horizontals have to be lighter than the verticals. L is difficult. A tucked right next to it. Because L has the counter here and A falls away to the right, making problems. Way over. Later we'll change the pen angle for the verticals on N so that it's not such a monotonous looking letter. And D, of course, has to be way over because of those parallels. D is such a nice letter. The vertical here, sharp horizontals, they're straight, and then that sweeping full curve, wonderful sweeping full curve. All right, now I said that the important thing is to keep the proper sequence and direction of stroke, order and direction of stroke. It's interesting that in Hebrew, that in Arabic, Chinese, as well as in our Roman alphabet, there are very definite ways of writing. That is, you work according to prescribed sequences and directions of stroke. And if you change it, you're bound to likely to get into trouble. But I know the Chinese teachers are extremely firm, and the same way in Korea and Japan, of getting the proper order and direction of stroke of those brush characters. Now, in cursive work, as in cursive Hebrew and cursive Arabic, of course, they push strokes, as we do some in Italic. But for anything, even formal or semi-formal, keep to the traditional order and direction of stroke. Now let's look at an A. And this is 1. And we know the ancients wrote it this way, and I'll show you why we know it. 2. You don't add that afterwards. 3. How do we know that that was the second stroke? Well, another alphabet, a quick alphabet, was rustic, and the crossbar was omitted. But in Uncial, the crossbar was added. It was put back in the letter. But notice, it follows the first. This is the right side of A. This is the crossbar. Now here comes the left side of A. Now the hand rounded this in Carolingian. But this is the left side of A. This is the crossbar. This is the right side. So that later, we're skipping the black letter. And by the Renaissance, here's the left side of A. Here is the crossbar. Here's the right side.